Hello, I am Anthony Lee, and I'm doing my presentation on Jane Wong, a poet that we have discussed earlier in a discussion post concerning her and Robert Bly. That's my main reason for wanting to cover her because I wanted to get her perspective on Robert Bly as well. I thought it'd be very interesting. I also understand that she is a very young poet, and and that she would be someone that I can easily understand. Now, doing some research on her, I find that I found an article on her, Jane Wong, Alexis' favorite local poet. Um, they started this out by mentioning an interview they had with Sherman Alexie. They asked him if he could choose a poet in Seattle, who would succeed him. He answered Jane Wong, and that surprised them because they thought he would pick a much older peer. However, they have read Wong's poetry, and they said you'll see why so many writers in town advocate for her. Consider Apology in the Age of Construction, the poem the Seattle Review of Poem Books published. It opens with an incredible striking image. Here's an excerpt. We can only recall the freak accidents: the lightning bolt hitting the right arm at the right angle, the bees pouring from an overturned truck, a crocodile that escaped on a lawn, sipping lemonade. They found the imagery in this to be very unique. Each disaster is so particular that each could be its own short story. Now, going back to what I emailed to her, I essentially gave her background on Robert Bly. Um, you can pause. You can pause here, by the way, if you want to read the entire thing. I gave her background on Robert Bly, that he started out traditional. He started out writing with poems with traditional rhyme and meter, but later would discard them in favor of more freer styles. Um, he found rhyme and meter to be limiting extremely. He also didn't favor imagism because he found that concrete nouns and images discourage abstraction and are grossly fabricated and held no significant meaning. Or at the very least, poetry that only utilizes concrete nouns and images. So, with that said, I asked her what she thought about it. Thoughts on traditional form and meter. Can a poem be free verse but have significant meaning and a unique form? What is poetry? What creates poetry for her? And and personally, like I asked her what motivates her to keep writing. Her reply to me um, was very assuring to me. I'm the kind of writer that does not like to have rules that limit me harshly. But what she said to me is that so long as I understand, have a strong sense of the form, traditional form and meter, it allows me to have the ability to break rules. I can play around with it, so to speak. Her example is Terence Hayes' Golden Shovel form, which seeks to honor your poetic lineage. And she sent me a link here to um, Writer's Digest. You can see here Golden Shovel poetic form. Essentially, you take a line or lines from a poem you admire. You use each word in the line or lines as an end word for your poem. Keep the end words in order. Give credit to the poet who originally wrote it, and the new poem does not necessarily have to be the same subject. So it's essentially like, taking parts from a poem that you want to write, that you want to take from, that you like, and then you make your own poem with it by using the words in the line at the end. Uh, I found that to be a quite an impressive way to break the rules, but while keeping to the same traditional form and meter. It's an exception. Uh, now, going back to her reply. She says that poetry to her is a space that where her questions can dwell, can allow her curiosity to roam the world, and poetry does not require answers. In terms of images, she believes that there's a balance and play between them. Her example is that there's a realness in a slug resting on a forest leaf. But for instance, what if that slug then becomes your brother? The realness of the image has to leap into surrealism. You have to take images and then make them abstract. Is her way of putting it. Um, I want to go I want to go back to the first point here, where she says she gave me a poem that plays with aphorism, and she says that the poem plays with the reader's expectations. Aphoristic. If you stay, you will always make that face. If you stay, a dog will bark and a chandelier will break. A child will bite another child right on the nose. A lesson learned will be a lesson worn. Red Baron, what is a good friend but apology? As in, I need my old habits. As in, I am sorry for the beetles littering the ceiling. For keeping miserable company. Truth is, I am nothing but a close stranger. Well begun, half done. Having taken the bull by the sinking ship, we both know when it rains. A snail opens its eyes to see water seeking its own level. To say there is no word for standing in a windy field, looking at the back of the one you love. Out of sight, out of sight, an open window. I once threw a stone into a glass house, and nothing happened. I threw it again, if only to hope for you, if only to waste not to want all too much. And I find this to recall many of the points that she given to me in her previous reply. Um, it is essentially a poetry that does not require answers. You cannot at least I cannot find a true answer of what this poem entails. Not at least at the first round of reading. I believe if I continue to read and interpret this poem, I will eventually find my own answers. I think that's what she's trying to get at. Poetry doesn't require answers, at least not from the poet itself. It can, however, answers can come from the readers, is what I would like to believe her second point means. Uh, as you can see here, the poem here also has a lot of imagery here. The dog will bark, the chandelier will break, the child will bite another child right on the nose. But it also stretches into surrealism, um, such as here having taken the bull by the sinking ship. That is not like a real image to like not something you would expect to have, but at the same time, you can imagine it very well. It is a realistic image that is taken into surrealism. I hope I hope I did a very well presentation of her. Thank you for watching.